I know what some of you have been asking yourselves. Can I use gouache the same way that I use watercolours? And the answer is yes. Yes, you can. Today in this video I have decided to do a fun experimentation. I've created an illustration on A3 paper of a Queen of Hearts playing card that I've designed to have a bit more of a Mother Nature type of theme. I've used a different technique to gouache than what I usually use when I normally will use it quite similar to acrylic, not using too much water and really mixing thick viscous colours of paint on the palette and then using that directly onto my canvas. This time I decided to actually really water down all of the colours that I was mixing and really slowly build up the layers of colour over the duration of the painting to create the finished product. Also, do be sure to watch to the end of this video because I have a little surprise in store for you. Without further ado, let's dive right in and I will show you guys the techniques that I used when creating this painting. Before starting off with this piece, because playing cards are designed in a sort of symmetrical, inverted type of style, I thought it would be best to first design the illustration, rough line work on my iPad using Procreate. It really saved me a lot of time in terms of making sure that everything was symmetrical and accurate. And then I printed off the two halves of the card on two A4 pieces of watercolour paper. And then I stuck those two A4 halves onto a large A3 piece of paper. And that's how I sort of worked around it because my printer can only print in A4, but I just thought this was going to make the process so much easier because particularly when you're working with watercolours, you do need a light underlay sketch so you can know where you're going to be building up the washes and a bit of a framework to work towards. I also printed off a small thumbnail version of this illustration and I just used my pencil to do a bit of shading so I could get a sense for the lighting and values in this piece. So I just started off this painting by mixing a really light version of the kind of skin colour that I was aiming for this queen, and I just watered it down quite a lot by adding lots and lots of water and really thinning the paint out. When you're working with watercolours, the key is really just to use lots of light wash layers, and every time that layer dries, and do make sure that it's dry before you move on to adding the next layer of paint, you just layer up the colours more and more each time you go back over your piece. So I just started off with like a really light wash of quite a pale skin tone, and I mixed some more saturated skin tones on my palette, and I used a hairdryer between placing each layer. I wanted to go for a bit of an English rose sort of skin tone for this one, so she's got quite fair skin. I really like mixing a sort of complementary colour in for the shadows, so I used a sort of bluey skin tone for creating the shadows on the other side of her face where her nose will be casting a shadow, and below her hairline and the flowers along the side of her face as well as on her neck. So just using a little bit of blue in the mixture of skin tones that you've made, you can create a sort of nice purpley blue wash that you can use to build up some shadowy tones. After I was happy with the base skin tone, I mixed a really, really light mousy brown colour and I just created a block wash for all of her hair. This block wash was a foundation for me to be able to go back in later on with some darker shades of browns and more reddy browns so I could start building in texture into her hair. But again, make sure that between each layer of painting with watercolours, you ensure that you use a hairdryer or wait for the paint to dry, because if you try and go back in with darker colours over your initial base wash, it will just smudge everywhere and it will bleed and it won't look great. So really can't stress that enough. Just make sure that you are drying each layer before going back in with a new wash of colour. As you can see, I just worked into the hair with a smaller brush and just built in the darker and darker tones each time until eventually the hair had a really nice finished texture to it. Once I was finished with that, I mixed up a really light pastel-y red tone and I used that to start filling in the Queen's dress. Again, you want to start with a sort of base tone colour, which you're then going to build upon with darker layers of colours that you're going to be creating throughout the process. The thing with watercolour is you can very easily go darker, but once you go dark, you can't really lighten the image again. So it's good to be patient and really take your time building up the layers, because if you rush into it and you go too dark, there's not really much you can do to fix it. So patience is key with this mode of practice. Once I had finished doing the base tones for the dress, I started mixing yellowy, goldy tones and some royal blue tones that I could start using for the patterns on the dress. I thought this was just a really nice contrast with the colours of the dress, but also kind of had quite a regal feeling to it. Again, feeding into my love for complementary colours, instead of making the flowers all red and rosy, I thought it'd be quite nice to have a bit of contrast, so I created some light turquoise washes that I could use to complement the colours of the girl's dress for the flowers that were coming down from her hair. It was really nice working with gouache in this way because I do usually use it quite similar to the way that you'd use acrylic, and to be honest, it really has rekindled my love for working with a watercolour method, because there's something quite therapeutic about how methodical you have to be when you're going through the stages of working with watercolours, and really using the gouache like watercolour didn't feel any different to me to using real watercolours. So I think if you've got a gouache set at home and you're curious about experimenting with it, then you can definitely give it a go, and if you're quite comfortable with watercolours, it really doesn't feel like you're doing anything different to the norm. So once I finished doing all of the colours for her dress and the hair and the flowers, I just decided to go in with a light sage washed out colour for the background. And I just went in with a fine liner and a white gel pen just to refine and crisp up some of the details, because I quite like having a bit of a graphical finish to these types of illustrations. I've always really liked working over watercolours with a dark black fine liner, not going too much into the details because you still want to maintain the delicateness of the piece, but it's quite nice to be able to go in and really just add a little bit more refinement to particularly the flowers and some aspects of the clothes that she's wearing as well. It just really makes it stand out a little bit more and adds a tiny bit more depth to the piece, which I really liked. Finally, I just finished up by outlining the Q for the Queen and creating a bit of a texture around the heart, and drew the rectangle encapsulating the Queen and the rest of the illustration. So that is it, guys. That is the finished piece. I hope you like it. I really enjoyed working on this, and I'm looking forward to doing some more stuff like this in the future. So that is it, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. I also just wanted to take a moment to say thank you so much to everyone who is currently subscribed to my videos and all of you who are watching this video right now. It really means a lot to me that I'm able to share with you my passions for creativity and to try and instill a bit of inspiration in you with my artwork to reconnect with nature in some way as well. And for those of you who are really enjoying following my art journey and you'd like to support my work in some form, but you're unable to afford paying for an expensive print from my website or a commissioned piece of artwork, then I have a little surprise for you. I have decided to start a Patreon account. As part of this platform, I'm going to be offering you guys exclusive content, including monthly colouring pages, guided long-form tutorials of how I've completed specific paintings, really going into depth with how I've created certain digital and traditional paintings. I'm also going to be offering in the future some webinars where I'm going to be able to chat with you guys about making your art into a business and how you can start to really build your profile as an artist and move away from just doing it as a hobby and starting to actually introduce opportunities for yourself to do the work as a full-time freelancer or even part-time if that's something that interests you. So the range of extras I'm going to be offering will depend on the package that you go for. If you're buying me a cup of coffee a month, then you'll get a couple of nice exclusive things. If you're giving £10, then you'll get a lot more exclusive stuff. So for those of you who are interested in that, follow the link below to my Patreon and check it out. I'm really looking forward to seeing you guys there and having a little bit more of a community space where we can grow and develop on a little bit more of a long form platform. If you guys like this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and leave a comment below letting me know what you thought about the Queen of Hearts playing card and this technique. For those of you who decide to join my Patreon, I'm going to be putting access to the line work colouring page of this design, so you can go away and you could colour in your own Queen of Hearts in whatever colours that you like. If you'd like to see more content from me, then don't forget to hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you can get notifications for my weekly videos. Thank you so much, guys. I hope you have a great day, and I will see you next week. Bye!